Hey, so I was reading this article from messy data to clean categories, Snowflake batch cortex search for high throughput entity resolution. So this is actually a really cool article by Willem Reering from Snowflake. And the cool thing about it is that it shows that you can do like an entity resolution pipeline built on top of the Snowflake's new Cortex search entity. And at the end, it ships with a Streamlit dashboard. And so I'm not gonna spare you with the details around what happens here, but I suggest like everyone reading. But the thing that interested me the most was not just actually the reading of what Willem wrote here, but it was actually the final output being on a Streamlit dashboard. And so when I actually run for the project, and when I run it, this is what the dashboard looked like. And there's a few things that I didn't like about it, and basically I converted it into like an OpenBB app, which you'll be able to see here. I'm running it like locally, and you can see that we have the same underlying data. But this kind of led me into like this rabbit hole around like, you know, explaining why like I did it, why I converted it into an OpenBB app, and why usually I prefer OpenBB apps as opposed to Streamlits, and in terms of like being like prod ready, if you will. I think Streamlit is amazing for POCs, but I want to talk today about why I would always recommend to build an OpenBB app. But the application is the same. The data that it surfaces is the same. So if I'm looking for Samsung, for instance, you have these raw data signals. This is the underlying table. Here you have that underlying table with the same filters that exist on the left side on Streamlit. And then here you can look for Samsung or something like that, which is the one we were looking, and you'll have the same underlying data, which is the purpose of this entire document, which is this like taxonomy, essentially like classifying into these 60 nodes of the GICS product taxonomy. So, and you can see here we take that and then roll data signal, and then we have the GICS classification with the sector, industry, and then industry group, industry, and then sub-industry, and then you have the entire full path, and you can select other elements. So, okay, I wrote some notes here, and I want to make sure I don't miss like important things. So one of the things I like about on OpenBB apps, and that do not work in Streamlit, is on Streamlit, every time I do something, let's say that I change these to communication services, or actually consumer discretionary, or let's do a task that like will like there's this like running where like the entire app essentially like runs, and so this is kind of the default that happens. There's no a concept of like a widget being like updated like individually. Usually it's always like the entire app, and I don't really like that, because sometimes it's like, why are we like reloading all the information? Why do I need to implement the caching logic myself? On the workspace, I much more like how we have it, where you can basically control like independently each widget. So you can refresh just a specific widget, and you're not gonna refresh anything else. And when you change like a parameter, so for instance here, if I change these, you'll see that this one does not change because it hasn't been changed. So why would we refresh the application? And if this refreshes also all the others that where this parameter is involved. So the criteria is like it will only update the widget that I'm working with unless it's grouped with others, and then it will update all the others. And that's like a really nice feature. So it recognizes across tabs the updates that need to be done, rather than the entire app. So that's the one of the things I like. The other one is actually around the code. So I really like the concept of widgets on OpenBB because it kind of borrows the idea from JavaScript, where you basically have the business logic and then you return how you want the UI to look. Except in the case of the workspace, you have an API endpoint that basically returns the data, how you want to see it, and then you have the widgets.json, which basically returns how the widget like looks like. So for instance, ticket distribution, you can see we're just returning the data, and then if I go onto the widgets.json and look for ticket distribution, it talks about the name, the description, what is the type of the widget, the endpoint, what is the grid size, and that's enough. Then when you go here, we should be able to see the ticket distribution, which is it in raw? No, it's second analysis, I think. Yeah, here, ticket distribution. Whereas like when you look onto Streamlit, the concept is a bit more ingrained, like as in the the business logic and the data is intertwined. And I think the main issue is that it doesn't scale well. So like the way you ship the UI, the Streamlit app, is related with the way the data is presented itself, and that leads to issues, because in the future, if you want to use that same data like via an API to another application, like you can't, because they are coupled together. And so like by decoupling it means that you can scale like much better, because then you can even like wrap it around an MCP or something like that. But the developer that is responsible by the data just has that API as their job to be done essentially, and someone can take it and build it into like bake it into the specific like applications that analysts want to use, or you know, if you want to connect it to Excel. But the Streamlit, most of the Streamlit apps that I see, they just bake all of these together, and then it becomes really hard to detangle it. And the workspace, the concept on OpenBB is already with that in mind. Is that, look, the endpoint should just return the date, and you can use that endpoint anywhere. Then the structure, how the workspace interprets that data, should just be about the spec. And this is also how we think about it, as in the OpenBB widgets, in demos, I always say that, look, at the end of the day, this is just an API. We are just wrapping that concept to make it very easy for the user to interact with it. So when I click here and I'm selecting a different one, it just means that I'm sending these all sectors or all industry groups into the API, and I'm showing the data. And then the workspace shows, based on the spec, what the user wanted to see. So in this case, we're basically defaulting to the bar chart, because that's what we have on the widgets.json specs, not how the data is returned. So we really like separate these two. Then I also like the fact that in the workspace you have full control around the refresh rates, when does the data get stale. So we have these onboarding app here, where you can see actually these input parameters, these settings here, and you can see, you know, the data here gets stale every 10 seconds. Here there's a refresh interval automatically updated in 5 seconds. Here you can see, for instance, it's still, that's why it's orange, and then it gets re-updated. This one will not get green, because I'm not gonna click anything on it, so it just shows you that it's still, but I can click on it and it refreshes the data. And when you hover on top, you also see when it was last updated. But then for more intensive data widgets, you can actually click on the button and say, you know, I want to run this now, or you can have a refresh interval and still click run, essentially. So I really like this kind of granularity in terms of like all the data is run within the workspace. Then I kind of mentioned this already, but the reason why I like I prefer how we do the parameters is because it's very clear to understand how specific parameters/filters impact the data being returned. So for instance, when I look into this, I know that if I select like Adidas as a brand, I know that all the data within these widgets is going to be updated. And I can click here and I know that none of this data got updated, because there's the same parameter at the top. Whereas if I go more down, same. If I go here, okay, here we see, because it's related. In Streamlit, you don't really have that concept. And so if I look here for Adidas and I do this, I was like, okay, what changed? Okay, I don't really know. Like, if you build the application, then sure, you will know, but then there's always this education, this like second guessing, and so I don't really like that. So this may be a preference thing, but I think it's so much easier to understand. Then the other thing is the view. So like, let's say that I'm looking this into as a bar chart. It's like, okay, what if I want to check actually the underlying data? Do I need to, like, you know, say view source? Like how does it work? What is if this is not the way I want to visualize this data? You cannot do much here. So if you're building Streamlit, you're really optimizing for the user experience of the developer that is building the app, but for the end user, there's not really like enough elasticity to change the UI, the visualization. Whereas when you're in the workspace, you can actually change like a lot of things. Let me just go back to the no brand selected. So for instance, let's say I don't want to see these as a bar chart. I can click here and I see just the underlying data. But let's say that I actually want to see a vertical chart. I can click here and I can select the first one. And there's this kind of like BI kind of capabilities, which we think are extremely important, like primitives, where you can interact with the way the data is visualized, and you can, you know, edit the title, you can add second axis and things like that, colors, themes, and so I think that that's much more powerful as an end user to be able to configure things as you want it, and that's like at the visual level. But and that's just on the chart only, but you can also do things on the table. So you can, you know, come here, you can like auto size all columns, or you can, you know, move things around if you're interested. You can also hide columns that you're not interested in. So there's quite a lot of capabilities. You can like reorder it because we're utilizing AG Grid. Yeah, it's quite powerful. Even here, you can do things like, you know, right click, and then I can maybe create like a bar chart from it, and then it creates like a static. So it's no longer based on an endpoint, and now it creates it like a static, but you can still see the underlying data. So this is the type of things that is very powerful to do on the workspace. We also have even more powerful things like advanced, which allows you to do pivot, stats, and then like formulas as well. So these are a bit more complex concepts. So stats gives you some statistics on the data available here. Columns here allows you to do like pivot and things like that in terms of how you group data together. And then you have formulas as well. This is nice when you have like, you know, multiple like different types of data column wise, and then you want to do operations between them and create like a new column, for instance, with like a division or something like that. So it's quite powerful. And then whenever you come to the dashboard back, like that data will be here, you know, even though the endpoint does not provide that data, the UI kind of enhances the user experience there, which I find myself like very powerful. And that is at the visualization layer, right? In terms of like the aspect of how the data gets presented. But there's the second layer here, which is like, what if I actually don't want this to be off screen? What if I wanted to take the entire width? So those are the type of things that you can actually do on the workspace that like you cannot do on Streamlit. You don't have that capability around like changing how the data gets presented, and that's super powerful to do on the workspace. And so you can literally target, like change things as you want to see them essentially. And that's just like really powerful in my opinion. Not just that, but because widgets are their own like independent, like atomic data units, if you will, you can even add other widgets that you have on the product. So for instance, I have this widgets library, I'm looking for thread series, and maybe I want to add thread series from Open Data Platform. I click here, and then there's no symbol selected. I want to add unemployment rate for some reason. It's the one that I usually use. So here you go. So now you have this additional data, and I didn't have to call a developer to change the code behind the Streamlit app. No, it just works. And so I find that like super powerful because now I can like fully control the environment I have. And let's say that now I wanted to share this with someone on my team. That's super trivial. So you can either click here, and my camera is on front. So you can click here and you can share, and then I share it with someone that I want. Or you can inclusive save these as an application. So if I save these as an application, sorry, my camera is in the way, and thread, I'm gonna just add something, and then I save it. I go into the apps, and you'll see that now it's saved. So that just means that OpenBB store the apps.json, and then basically the thread data is here. And you see how we store how you want to see the data already. So that makes it like super powerful because yeah, you're not like nothing needed to be like rerun or anything like that, because we're just handling API endpoints that are hosted that we have permissions to see. And if I shared something with someone on my team that does not have permission to see, they won't see the data. But we also provide additional layers on the workspace to control who has access and who hasn't. And here, for instance, let's say I wanted to share this with someone. It's actually just as simple as clicking here. I click continue, and then I can share this with someone on my team. But again, I mentioned, like, it depends on whether the person has access or not. But that's all things you can control. So if you go onto the admin portal, you can go onto actually role management. And in this case, like let's say we have analyst pod 2, you can see who are the roles inside of it. And then you can go into permissions, and I say, okay, let's edit the permissions. And I can say, okay, this is the one that we're looking for. They don't have access. Let's make sure that this has access. I can save changes, or I can also go into widgets, and I can individually, for individual widgets, select the ones that they have access and the ones that they don't. So for instance, maybe I don't want them to be able to write SQL queries, even though I would protect the select, I would limit it to select only, but I can say, okay, no access, and then I can save changes. And you can see here what are the differences that are applied, and I can confirm it. And yeah, so that's quite powerful in my opinion, the fact that you can have this granularity control as an admin level. And it all comes out of the box. You pretty much don't need to do anything. The other thing is like and particularly when you think about vibe coded apps, right? It's very easy when multiple people are building like different applications vibe coded. Like they use different tech stacks, they use different ways to grab the data, particularly if there's not like a data API layer already pipeline to use. And it kind of becomes a mess. It's like different links, the data doesn't work together, and then you don't really know who's like the owner of the development of the application, and then they use the different design systems, different branding, and it just becomes really messy. Whereas in the workspace, you just have this concept of applications, and all of these are different applications with different types of data. That's like, you can see the styling looks the same, throughout, regardless of the type of data we are seeing. And that means that you can, like, combine the data that you are seeing here with any other data. So if I was looking at the taxonomy thing, I could bring this portfolio exposure by sector into it, and it just has the same design, like a system, like style, and you can fully control it. So you could literally go into here, I can go into the team settings, and I can literally control like the color carousel associated with the charts, also how it looks into the dark mode, but also on the table side, you can fully control the coloring, the spacing, and even have like a watermark logo. So that's very nice, and it makes it so that everything kind of looks like the same stack, and your organization can all work together within the same workspace infrastructure. Where is the next one? The next one is super small, but basically we make all the data from here available on Excel. So for instance, let's say that I want to get this sector hierarchy on Excel. I will be able to click here, Excel formula. I get the underlying formula of it associated with this data, where you can see here the parameter, which is sector AL, that is sent. And then you can also make it like explicit. So I could just copy paste these into the A1, B1 cell onto Excel. And as long as you have the OpenBB Excel add-in, then you can literally just grab this data. So the workspace kind of acts as an ecosystem where you can get the data out. But maybe you just want to export it, and we also allow that, and we also allow to export like as a PDF. So all that type of like infrastructure kind of comes out of the box without you having to worry about anything. Okay, this kind of covers most of the dashboarding UI data that I wanted to, and I want to talk a bit about AI. So with the workspace, you get also the entire like AI infrastructure on top. So let's start actually by the prompts. So you get some prompts that come automatically as part of the application. So the idea is that the developer can set a set of prompts to give us an idea to the end user on terms of what they can use on the workspace. So if I click here, I'm going to open the dashboard here, and I'm going to start a new shot. You can see that we have here a few prompts that we can basically use. So I can click here, and the Copilot, which right now we're using OpenBB Copilot, which is the default one that comes with the workspace, but we have the same concept as the data and the widgets, which is users and our clients can actually build custom agents on top of the workspace and bring the ones, so they can have like an open weight model that is running locally on top of their own data, and they hosting the workspace, and everything like works in-house without data leakage, which I think is like I think it's great. But here, for instance, I provided these answer, and these prompts I just asked Claude as some reference examples. You can see here the traces, or you retain all the context, which means that you are not sending to a third party out necessarily, but you are retaining it all. So if you have different pods, different teams utilizing these workspace internally with your data, you can get all the data, all the context, and it's not being scattered across like ChatGPT and Claude, and all of that context can be then used to add more data widgets, because you are understanding that they are asking questions that the data doesn't exist, or maybe you can understand that the data is wrong, or maybe that the agent is not producing good enough results, and that allows you to tweak it a bit. And then all of these you can also always over to see where the data comes from. So from here is utilizing brand concentration. When I over, you can see sector analysis gets highlighted, but then I also click go to tab, and it goes directly to the widget that provided the data. All of the data that gets produced here can actually be added back onto the dashboard. So when I click here, it created it. Now it's a static artifact that lives here, and I can actually change the metadata. Metadata is important because it allows the agent to then use these data in an answer in the future, and so that's why it's important for you to tweak it a bit for your specific use case. But all of these things, citations and things like that, the step-by-step reasoning are things that you can edit on your own. You can also go full screen. So if you are just wanting to use AI, which I think is a paradigm that many people are doing today, you can also do that. And I can click on this one, let's see if it works. And basically what's happening here is that I'm actually still working on that dashboard, and you can see here actually the tabs, and you can see the widgets within each tab, which you can specifically say what are the widgets that you want to use to get a specific workflow done. And let's see if this works. Again, all the artifact generators can be added back onto the dashboard. Oh, perfect. I get an investment intelligence report, sector exposure, brand concentration, vendor coverage. I can scroll through it and I was like, okay, this is actually like really nice. Maybe we try to add that into the dashboard, which is like an HTML widget. It's creating it, and I want to show the widget. It actually shows it here on the dashboard. I can scroll it up and you have access to it. And now maybe I don't want to use the AI anymore. So that kind of gives you an idea of the type of things you can do. Then the other thing I wanted to show is I added actually this SQL query, which does not exist on the dashboard here, but this is one of my favorite capabilities within the workspace, and we built it as part of the Snowflake native app, where basically you have this concept of widgets, but the business logic, the SQL query, actually is available here. So if I run it, you can see the underlying data, and I can hide that business logic. And so whenever I click on this button here, the data is going to be refreshed, and this data is coming from the data warehouse. We just do like a pass through via the backend, and then but yeah, the business logic, when I want to see it, when I want to change it, is available here. If I want, I can, if there is an issue, you can fix it directly here because it appears like fix with AI. You can also click here to basically generate like a prompt that takes into account like the data, what is selected. So there's quite a few nice capabilities that we've introduced as part of our work with Snowflake to make this nice, and all of those features are available within the workspace. And this is something that is very nice as well from the Copilot's perspective. So the Copilot has actually access to these. So I'm not sure if, I don't think I have a query here that utilizes this data. Let me see. No, I don't think so. But basically the agent can utilize data that is available here. I was playing with it earlier this morning, but I'm not sure if I... Oh, actually did it here. Okay, so it actually run this entire SQL query, it executed it, and it returned the top 3 vendor triplets. Yep. Yeah, artifact generator. So perfect. You get the perfect example. Yeah, where the data is utilized, and you can see that is quite complex prompt. So yeah, that's the type of workflows that you can build on top of the workspace, essentially, when it uses the AI. And you get all of these like out of the box, and there's ton of features. So if I go actually into the workspace documentation, which is you get the AI features here, which is as a user, but then you also have the developer ones below where you can actually see what's possible. You get how to do generative UI, so adds widgets on the fly, how you can have skills, which actually the report that was generated by utilizing that skill. You can have MCP tools, so all of that management also you benefit from. You can drop files, you get all of that out of the box when you use the workspace for your entire team. So imagine the AI team only has to build one agent and everyone can use it. So now I could come here and say, okay, I want to use this custom agent, and now I'm using a completely different agent for a specific workflow. And if you want to add more, then that's simple. Just click here and you add the agent that you are hosting somewhere. This is where you manage the MCP servers. This is where you manage the skills. And then you can have a set of prompts that you manage here, or also from the backend that you surface. And then the final thing, and this video was meant to be less than 10 minutes, but yeah, I always run over. The final thing is that the backend, it doesn't need to be Python. It could actually be any type of language, as long as the spec exists in JSON, and there's like, an API endpoint connected to a database or not. Like that's all the workspace requires. So yeah, this kind of concludes what I wanted to show, which is these alternative data intelligence like taxonomy, Streamlit dashboard recreated onto OpenBB Workspace, and why for production ready workflows I would always use OpenBB as opposed to Streamlit. I hope this is helpful, and let me know if you like this type of content. Thank you.